what's out there.
Hello and welcome to Home Media Minefield presents Let's See What's Out There Plus, a weekly video stream and podcast currently focused on Star Wars The Mandalorian Season 3, which is available to watch on Disney Plus. My name is Keith Isles, and if you're new here to this channel, welcome. Please do check out some of the other work, and I'll get it all out of the way now. If this is your sort of thing, consider giving us a like, hitting that thumbs up button, subscribing to the channel, and if you hit the bell icon, you'll get notified as to the various film and television related content that we have on this channel. So we're back for a new season of The Mandalorian, Season 3. We did cover Season 2 as a podcast, but not a live stream. So, or should I say a video stream, a vodcast. So we got a slightly different format, but we have covered some of the other Star Wars series on Disney Plus in this similar format. We've looked at Andor, we've looked at Obi-Wan Kenobi, we've looked at Boba Fett, and as I said, our Mandalorian Season 2 is available on all good podcasting apps as well. So please do check that out. In today's episode, we are going to have a spoiler-filled conversation around the first episode of Season 3, which are actually down as chapters. So this is, in fact, Chapter 17, The Apostate. So I'm really pleased to say, though, I am not doing this alone. I am, of course, a independent filmmaker and a lifelong fan of Star Wars, but I am also joined by another great Star Wars fan, and he is also a writer and an artist and has been a guest on the show before. Welcome, Graham Williams, or Din Graham. How you doing, Graham?
All well here. Thanks, Keith. Thanks for having me back. Looking forward to this.
No, good. I was going to say we've talked about was Andor the last one you were on, Graham?
Absolutely, yes. 2022.
Right, there you go. Not that long ago, actually, but it has been a while since we've had the Mandalorian on our screens, or sort of at least the series The Mandalorian. But we'll get into that. I'm really pleased to say I've got my Mandalorian Bounty Hunter mug, or my Mando mug, as I call it. And that is was a Christmas present from my dear mother, who I know is one of the few people that regularly watches this show. So hello, Mum, and thank you for that, having a relevant mug for the show. So
that's nice.
My mug, obviously. So, yes. So for those who are new to this, we do have a little bit of a format to the show. We'll have a bit of chit chat at the beginning, just about any news or anything Star Wars related that we've come across. Then obviously we do a little bit of a spoiler episode summary. We look at some of the people behind the scenes and the production credits. Have a bit of fun with Easter eggs. We're not a definitive list here, but it's just things that we might spot just for a bit of fun. Also, for a bit of fun, predictions and speculation as to where we go. But then we really get into it with our thoughts on the episode, our individual thoughts, and any nitpicks and things of that nature, and then give you the opportunity to get in touch with the show, should you wish to. So before we get into it, Graham, any sort of just other thoughts or anything you want to mention?
About Mando itself, well, with that... it's good to have it back. I think part of my chat is for all those, it's going to be spoiler filled, especially if you didn't get through to the end of the book of Boba Fett. I did pull my family through that as well, because they've got hooked onto the man between seasons 2. We've gone right back to the beginning and gone through that. So my family now up to speed, but I had to take them through Boba Fett as well. But also, it should come up a couple of times, though, I have watched the excellent and thoroughly fascinating Light and Magic documentary on Disney Plus, Lawrence Kasdan one. So if we touch upon that then all well, because I thought I'll give it a go, and then so my evenings were consumed with that. So that was just excellent, and it kind of almost gave me some Star Wars in between. Book of Boba Fett and Mando as well, and all the better for it.
Yeah, no, it is so good. Again on Disney Plus, so we're really plugging Disney here. Hope you're listening, Disney. Light and Magic, fantastic. Anyone who grew up in the era that we did, with those films, the Star Wars films, the Star Trek films, the Indiana Jones movies, Back to the Future movies, all that sort of thing, and everything around it as well. E.T., Gremlins, I think they mentioned all sorts in there, didn't they? But really inspiring stuff from the pioneers of visual effects in that sort of era of movies. So yeah, love that show, and thanks for mentioning that, because I think that's a really good recommendation and very relevant to some of the stuff we're going to be talking about, I feel.
Oh yes.
But anyway, we're going to start off with our little recap of this week's episode. So Graham, you may fire when ready.
Okay, we open the season on a montage. The Mandalorian armorer, High Priestess, Lady, fashions a Mandalorian helmet in a cave for a foundling. He, the foundling, stands in a lake outside, surrounded by other helmet-clad Mandalorians. Is this a flashback of Din Djarin's initiation into the Mandalore Creed? The baptism-like ceremony is rudely interrupted by a massive Star Wars croco monster, and he, she, they is a tough brute and hard to kill. Now enter Mando Din Djarin in his brand new shiny N1 Naboo starfighter, who literally blasts the guts out of the monster to save the day. But he is not forgiven. The armourer sticks to a harsh edict. Jin tells her he will redeem himself by bathing in the living waters of Mandalore. This is the way. Cue Season 3's mission number 1, and cue opening titles. Mando and Grogu stop off then at an almost unrecognisable planet Nevarro. His old friend Greef Karga is now High Magistrate, and business is good. After much explanation of how good business and trade is actually on Nevarro, with heaps of comedy gold from Grogu using the Force exactly how we secretly would use it in our day-to-day lives, at least I would, Mando asks a favour. He wants what is left of IG-11, the only droid he trusts to help him search Mandalore. For those of us who remember way back to Season 1, or for those of us who paid attention in the episode's recap, that is what Taika Waititi's character, who sacrificed himself to help the Mandalorian at all, escape stormtroopers and Moff Gideon. Cue mission number 1.1. IG-11 does in fact still work, but has reverted to his original programming to kill Grogu. A droid uses his head, well, the Bust of Grief said, to smash IG-11, which means he now needs fixing. Mando is introduced to the best droid smiths in the Outer Rim. These are more tiny, cute characters from the Star Wars universe known as the Anzellans. To get IG-11's memory back, Mando needs to find another part for the Anzellans. Cue mission number 1.2. Leaving Nevarro behind, Mando and Grogu in the starfighter are rudely interrupted by space pirates, one of which had earlier rudely interrupted Din and Greef's amble back on Nevarro by forcing a tense Western-style standoff where 4 pirates were killed. Now, Mando zooms, evades, jinx, hides, and blasts the pirates away through ILM magic through an asteroid belt. Or are they a Star Wars bunch of potatoes? Never trusting a pirate, Mando hyperzooms the starfighter to the next planet, Kalevala, in the Mandalore system, and to a Mandalorian castle. Cue mission number 2.1. Mando finds Bo-Katan sitting dejected on the throne of the castle. With no Darksaber, she has lost her supporters and lost her stolen fleet. She hints that it's all Mando's fault. Mando tells her of his mission in the living waters of Mandalore before leaving Boca to wallow in her own self-pity. Cue end credits.
Very good. Very entertaining. This is the way indeed. So with that out the way, we are going to have a quick look at behind the scenes and thank the maker. All right, so just having a look at the credits for this week. So this show was written by Jon Favreau. We've talked about him many a time on previous episodes. He is, of course, also the showrunner for this series. So, you know, he's started off as he means to continue there. And we will see more of him, no doubt, throughout the show, because he is also one of the characters in it as well. And this episode was actually directed by Rick Famuyiwa, who, looking at Rick's previous credits, he has indeed been involved in previous episodes of The Mandalorian. He directed some of the season 2 episodes, but is also the director of The Wood, Brown Sugar, Our Family Wedding, Dope, Confirmation, They Call Me Magic, and We Will Be Monsters television series, and indeed executive producer on some of those as well, including now The Mandalorian, but also Dope and They Call Me Magic. So he got some well-known credits there, and I think generally did a pretty good job of all of this. I'm trying to remember the name of the character. I was struggling there. As you can see, I hadn't prepared properly that Jon Favreau plays, and it's gone completely out of my head. Do you happen to remember it?
You didn't know this. This is a learning curve for me.
Sorry. Hold on. Let me see if I can find it. People will be screaming as we speak here, I'm sure. Actor.
Yeah, Mrs. Isles will be just absolutely
yeah, exactly. Exactly. That one viewer will be very upset by this. Actor. Yes, sorry, it's Paz Vizsla. I totally blanked on his name, but yes, he played the character Paz Vizsla.
The big Mandalorian.
That's right. Yes, yeah. So he was.
We don't say fat anymore. We say large. Well built.
Well built, absolutely. But there you go. As you can see, we haven't done this in a while, and it is showing. Sorry, I was completely unprepared there. I was like, trying to remember the name.
But props this time on the writing, some smart stuff there for what essentially is, a first episode and the first mission for a season, and the directing as well. I was thinking back, it was the siege in season 2 that Rick had I'd seen last direct, and even though a big take on the Wages of Fear, still an excellent tense episode there. So props for this one.
And I've seen him interviewed, and I think again that's on Disney Plus, The Gallery. I think it's The Gallery where they interview some of the things, and he does indeed cite Wages of Fear as a reference there. And that's good for me. I like it when filmmakers have their references to classic movies. That's really good. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm feeling a bit thirsty, Graham. It's that time of the show. So it's time to get some Bantha Milk Blue.
Yeah, if for all those who know the Andor Homage Minefield, Keith, I've just gone back to water, mate. I had to let Bertha, the Bantha, go. She was in my back garden near the black shed at the back, but Bantha milk didn't do so well for the stomach.
It wasn't the only thing you let go, right? Well, this is.
I let that one slide.
Yes, exactly. The reason we call this Bantha Milk Blue is just a play on we also do a show on Star Trek Picard, and for the Easter egg section, we call it tea Earl Grey hot, as one would imagine. So we just thought we'd call this Bantha milk blue. Cold, I guess, or teats warm. I don't know how you.
It's usually not. You never see a bantha. You never see a bantha actually milked, and B, it's always in containers somewhere else. So if you're on Tatooine, where they're native too, I suppose it would be a bit room temperature warm, wouldn't it? But in Andor, it's actually processed. So I'd imagine that is cold, straight from the Star Wars type fridge.
Yes, I have tried it in Galaxy's Edge, and it's a blue slushy sweet drink. It's weird. It doesn't see. There's nothing milky about it, really.
But here at Shea Williams, of course, it's a bit more authentic than that. The fan made bantha milk, hence the creamy goodness, or not.
Indeed. Right. Well, this is where we look at references and Easter. I mean, I've said this on other shows, but if you're new to the channel, I'll say this here. I mean, when it comes to Star Wars, with the possible exception of Andor, actually, but most of the shows are one big Easter egg, because there's this wonderful galaxy that George Lucas and his various creative team came up with for all of those movies. And we've got different species, different technology, different droids, all sorts of things. And yes, they are all referenced somewhere in something. So it's just a bit of fun. There are comprehensive channels out there that do manage to list literally every reference, whether it's a verbal reference or a visual cue or something in the background or whatever. But we just have a bit of fun and look at what we actually spotted. So, Graham, I'll let you go first. Was there anything in particular that stood out as a Star Wars Easter egg?
Well, a few. You know me and my references, so I'm also keen to learn. But definitely, the Anzellans first took me a while. Took me a second viewing, and I went, "Oh, wait a minute, that's from the final trilogy." As the droid smiths. So there was an introduction there, so we already know that the teeny weeny cute Anzellans, they're already introduced, even though they technically are in the future Star Wars chronology, where we would have, but we've as audience, we've already seen them. Now, whether I think wasn't that in Rian Johnson's, not J.J. Abrams, or have I got it the wrong way around?
No, they actually, a character called Babu Frick actually appeared in Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker.
There we go.
And it was that character, I don't want to say he or she, because it was that character that actually managed to restore C-3PO's memory after it got wiped. Again, something that they could have been interesting, but they undid it right away. But hey ho, in that. And in this, it's voiced by the same actress, who is a British actress called Shirley Henderson, who's been in quite a few things. I recently saw her. I went back and watched Happy Valley, which was great, by the way. Totally different thing. But she was in that amongst many other things. But she did do the voice for Babu Frick in Rise of Skywalker, and also came back to do that in this. So yes, that was a nice little reference indeed. Was there any more that you
Well, the obvious, if you have to be technical about it, IG-11, who we thought that was the end of him, and nicely done with having him as a statue on Navarro, but then taken apart, because that was he was one of the first characters for us to see in Mandalorian as a whole there. So good to see him, and obviously should now feature in in all of this. I had an inkling that I'd seen the creatures that we were seeing, the flying space creatures we were seeing in the hyperspace, which I didn't mention in my summary there. I did look them up online, and Purgils apparently they're called as well, but there's a lot there for me to learn because I hadn't actually couldn't remember them, but I know they had been introduced elsewhere too, and the C-3PO cousins as well. There were lots of them, nice little references. Even though I'm wearing my Stormtrooper T-shirt here, no Stormtroopers, nothing from the Empire there, but there's a lot of Star Wars creatures and droids involved too. So again, I felt that even though it's a bit more glossy now and things are changing, we were still within the Star Wars galaxy. So you couldn't mistake it for anywhere else.
Yeah. No, to be honest, you got the three that I pointed out in my slide. I only got these three images, and yes, one is indeed for IG-11, who we'll get into that. I want to talk about that, but obviously from season 1, and obviously we've talked about the Anzellans and Babu Frick, which is a picture of there. And then you're absolutely right. The sort of space whales that were traveling through hyperspace are known as Purgils, and they were seen in Star Wars Rebels, which takes place about 5 years or so before A New Hope, in that period, and they were very much linked towards the end of that series, I guess, coming up to sort of New Hope territory, where Ezra Bridger, who's one of the main characters in that, and Ashoka Tano, who we've obviously seen now in live action, are kind of involved with that, and Grand Admiral Thrawn. But I don't want to say too much because I don't want to ruin it for you. But yes, this is the first time we've seen that in live action, which is pretty cool. Obviously, Dave Filoni, who did most of the animated Star Wars stuff, is of course a producer and writer on this show as well. So he and Jon Favreau are sort of expanding on that universe and bringing in those elements, which is really cool. Just trying to think other things that again were sort of mentioned in passing is we get Cara Dune mentioned, and the fact that she joined a special forces group. Obviously, that was originally, I guess, going to set up that series before Gina Carano got, dismissed from Disney and whatever. So it was just kind of a throwaway line now, I guess. And there's a lot of stuff to do with Mandalorian heritage and whatever mentioned. Again, I was talking to someone about this the other day, and I described myself as a Star Wars enthusiast rather than an expert or aficionado. So, I don't pick up on every reference, that's for sure. But I'm usually very visual, so I pick up on visual references more than some of the things like planet names and all of that sort of stuff. But yeah, I'm sure there's other bits and pieces in there. If anybody is listening out there and you want to put it in the comments when you see this, we're more than happy to accept that sort of thing. So yeah, please do.
There's one more, because you talked about visual. In my recap earlier on, I was hoping, and I was looking as well to see if I could see any potatoes in the asteroid field as we were going through, famously as the from Empire Strikes Back, and corroborated, confirmed in Light and Magic as well.
By Ken Rolston. Yeah,
that's right. The amount of not one potato, or 2 potato, 3 potato, or 4 potatoes. There were many potatoes as an asteroid field in Empire, and I want somebody to say that it was in the asteroid field in the exciting shoot 'em up chase sequence in space as well.
It wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me if they did. But yeah, no, very cool. Very cool. Well, before we actually get into our thoughts of this and really dig into it, we're just going to have a look at speculation. So never tell me the odds. Or I've got a bad feeling about this, depending. Any theories or anything you want to throw out there? I mean, I think it's open to whatever at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, and I watched the initial trailer, nothing else, in 2022 when it first was dropped, uploaded, streamed. So the trailer does give a hint that we're going to have. We've already had it in the episode where we've had Mando, Din Djarin, actually, set up his mission. So you've got both the armorer and then you've got Bo-Katan, and we see that there's going to be conflict there, and Jin will have to decide between the two. So that's coming, right? We've now got this mission, mission upon mission and submissions to come, and how they divvy that up, or do we just get straight into it? In episode 2, it has to happen because he wants IG-11. He wants to get to Mandalore. There will be now pirates chasing after him, so that's going to just up the ante, and I expect that to happen in episode 2. But the second episode is more likely to, settle more into the story. But I'm hoping what they did, as they did with this episode, that they'll make it a bit more exciting as well. But I had thought, actually, so that's Mando's journey, is that I'm intrigued and I have no guesses as to where Grogu will be in this. Because now what we've seen with Grogu episode or chapter 17 is that he's still the naughty little thing, the naughty little boy, effectively, or girl person. So, because using the Force, which we'll get into, because that was belly laughs. He had a decision, did Grogu. He's made it, but where does that take him now? So I think really plotting out Mando's in detail, we'll see, and we can speculate each week. But we kind of know what the big conflict and where he's going to get bumped around. But Grogu is the one, like we had with Book of Boba Fett, after the end of Mando season 2. That's the intriguing one. And I feel because it's either going to be that Grogu just pushes away from more the Jedi, pious, good side. Not saying he'll draw to the dark side, but I think he'll draw that way. But it's Mando who'll pull him back to center, maybe. That makes sense. Yeah. So I think that those are my only thoughts there, and that's what really intrigues me as much as the excitement and tension that we'll have through the factions of Mandalore, the two separate ones with Din Djarin down the middle. Yeah. I mean, one could certainly argue that the title of this episode refers to multiple characters, because it's not just Din Djarin who's kind of, got away from the Mandalore way and got to, now sort of earn it back. But obviously Grogu moved away from training with Luke and the Jedi and whatever, and Bo-Katan, has sort of moved away from the Rangers and whatever that she was with in Mandalore. So they've all kind of gone through that journey, haven't they? Where we're starting this series anyway. So that's an interesting one, because I was questioning the name, the use of the noun, because Din Djarin hasn't renounced a religion. He's been pushed down. Apostates are those who reject rather than being chucked out. Whereas, you're right. So Grogu and Bo-Katan have both rejected. So they are the apostates, technically, as the definition goes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I do sort of like it when they try. Although I have to say, the titles are fine, but the whole episode numbering conventions that which they seem to change all the time. You know, we're back to chapters again now, and it's like, yeah, we'll get into that when we get into nitpicky stuff. But in terms of speculation, the only things I could come up with is I wondered whether we might see in live action. I mean, I said this last time for Andor, because it was sort of crossing over with the events of Star Wars Rebels, and I was wondering whether that meant that we might see a live action Ezra Bridger character in it at some point. And because we've got these space whales, and again, I don't want to go into lots of spoilers, but there's some connection there. Wonder whether they might try and work that in. But one thing I'm definitely more certain about is we're going to have more to do with the dark saber and whoever wields that and battles for that, and you know, whether that's Bo-Katan or somebody else. I think you know, it is still in Din Djarin's possession, right? I believe
It very much is, and he even confirmed that to Bo-Katan in the castle. So
right.
he said
Okay.
he still has it. We didn't see it in action, but we didn't need to.
Fair enough.
We take his word for it. He seems an honest kind of guy.
Exactly. Well, now it's time to get to a certain point of view. Okay, sorry, I've made us small. There we go. So yeah, this is where we really get into it. I've got quite a lot of thoughts and stuff, but Graham, you know, you're the guest on the show for this season, so I want to let you go first.
That's a good kind of you. Yeah, I pushed myself to see this twice, once on my own and once with the family as well. Two very different viewings, and that was genuinely great to have, because, you know, again, a tough one to do. You know, there's a lot to deal with from Mando season 2, remembering then what happened in Boba Fett, and then coming into this as well. And my first viewing was because when I watched the first episode of season 2, after what I thought was some of the best TV and most exciting TV from Mandalorian season 1, you know, I saw, okay, I was wondering to myself why I didn't first enjoy this so much, and I realized that actually with Mando season 1, everything was fresh. I was coming from a place where the 3 final, you know, episodes 7, 8, 9 of the Star Wars movies were a massive mess and a disappointment. I was coming into something that was exciting, harked back to classic spaghetti westerns and American westerns. Also, Lone Wolf and Cub, not mentioned enough in describing, or at least talking about the Mandalorian, because there's so many parallels there. And I realized that this is a season 3 now, and if you look back at TV history, American TV history, everything's a bit more glossy in season 3, 4, and 5, because there's more money, there's more confidence from the studios into the production as well. So, you know, you look at Grief there, you know, you've got him top right. He's a lot more comfortable. You know, the hairdos, the costumes are a lot more shiny and a lot more pristine. So on my second viewing of chapter 17, getting to see it with others, knowing what was going to happen and seeing their reactions, it was like, yeah, this is actually a good foundation, you know, resetting the foundation. So that was really well done in the writing, but also giving us some excitement and a proper setup of missions as well. So it did a lot. It did a lot of heavy lifting, but it made it light. I didn't feel as if I was just being talked at, because there was a danger that happened. So major, you know, props and kudos to Jon Favreau there. So yeah, really enjoyed this one.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. Okay, I'm going to say, all right, we're not one of those podcasts because there are plenty of them out there that just sort of rant and complain about anything. Because I always say that what we try and do on Let's See What's Out There and Home Media Minefield is come at everything with from a point of view of love and positivity as much as possible. However, having said that, I've got to say I had a few problems with this episode, and overall, I'm sure the series will get better, but overall, as an opening episode, I was somewhat underwhelmed by this. I've got to be honest. First of all, something I have a real problem with, and I know a lot of Star Wars fans are completists and watch everything, and that's fine. I've got a whole thing about being a completist, but that's a conversation for another time, perhaps. But I do think that Disney are really good at making things bloody confusing for people who are, if you like, more casual fans. Because I agree with you, after the disappointing sequel trilogy, let's make no bones about it, they were pretty underwhelming. And then we get The Mandalorian, which was a breath of fresh air for sure. And I covered season 2 with my friend Ryan Holloway. We did it as a podcast, so it's available as Let's See What's Out There on podcast apps. And that conclusion to season 2 was super exciting. I mean, it wasn't only the fact that we get, Luke Skywalker doing really cool Jedi stuff and R2D2 and, all those Easter eggs, all that fan service in there. But it was a exciting climax to the season. There were stakes, and it was a genuinely moving ending where, Grogu goes with Luke Skywalker. Din Djarin has to say goodbye. He has to take the helmet off, which, leads to all this. He's wielding the Darksaber at that point. We've got Cara Dune. We've got Bo-Katan. We've got... I'm so blanking with names today. The Ming-Na Wen characters whose names completely escaped me. But we had all of them there. What a great end to that season, right? That was chapter 16. So we start chapter 17 and they do a previously on Star Wars, right? But we get all of the mention of, the Mandalore code and the fact that he, took his helmet off and, all of that sort of stuff. But we get nothing about the fact that Grogu comes back, that Mando gets a new, starfighter. All of these massive things that happened in Book of Boba Fett over 2 episodes, I think it was, in that very mediocre show, that were absolutely key to the plot here, that doesn't really get covered and get skirted over. And even worse, we have to go over stuff that we already know from that, because they had to explain, his chat with the armorer is essentially exactly the same conversation that he had in those episodes of Book of Boba Fett with the armorer in that. And all of that stuff, I don't know, it just annoyed me from the beginning, because I thought this for anyone that's just watching The Mandalorian and giving Book of Boba Fett a pass is kind of losing all of the... It's almost like it's a reset. It's almost like it's a reboot, because we've got it back to the, as you've aptly described, the lone wolf and cub scenario, with Grogu back and them going on quests and adventures together, which I guess is what season 1 and 2 was anyway. But I just don't know. I just feel like the stakes that season 2 was left on in chapter 16, and then you try and pick it up here, unless you've got that comprehensive knowledge of what happened in Book of Boba Fett, I just think it's kind of cheated the audience a bit. So that kind of annoyed me. I'm not going to lie. It's probably probably people are screaming at this, saying, what's wrong with you, Keith? That's no big deal. But it just, I don't know, it just wound me up. So I just found that, I think that's a bit annoying and confusing for people. I don't know. Am I being over the top?
No, it's a fair point, because I did have to quickly recap from watching Book of Boba Fett with family in 2022 to remind them where we were, because we had gone through it, not all of it, just the Lone Wolf and Cub aspect of Boba Fett, including the entire episode without Boba Fett in the Book of Boba Fett, or the book without. So yeah, I had to recap quickly, so there wasn't that fresh memory. So absolutely valid point there, Keith. I get that. It was fresh in my mind.
By the way, sorry, Fennec Shand was the name of the character that I totally blanked on there. Sorry, I hate that. I didn't, as I said, didn't do my homework. But so I was kind of bothered by that. I've got to be honest, and I know it's probably a bit of a petty thing, but that kind of irritated me slightly. and then I don't know, the episode itself. I know we're just trying to set things up for the season. I get that. It's pretty difficult to do. We did have a couple of good action set pieces. We had the thing with the Mandalorian ceremony at the beginning, which was a great action sequence, seeing the Mandalorians using all of their weapons and their tech and their jetpacks, and all of that was really good. I, like you said in your thing, for a minute thought it was a flashback to Din Djarin's initiation, initially. But so that was a good juxtaposition there. That was good. Obviously, the asteroid battle and whatever was good, but there were a lot of things I didn't like. I've got to be honest. So, being annoyed about the lack of recap aside, one of the things that really bothered me is the whole IG-11 thing. All right, that character sacrificed itself at the end of season 1 so that everybody could escape, and it literally self-destructed and blew itself into pieces. And here in the statue, it seems that quite a bit of it's intact, and I don't know. I just sort of think they should leave that alone. I get it that Din Djarin, part of his characterization is that he doesn't trust droids because of what happened to him when he was a youngling. I get that, and I get that he did form a trust with IG-11. So that I can sort of see, on one hand, that makes sense, but the cynic in me thinks it's just another way to get Taika Waititi back in the show, and
that's not a bad thing ever.
Well, yeah, no, I know, but sometimes characters should die, I think, and even though this is, obviously a droid, but I don't know, it just seems like they're just undoing something that that they set up well. That they're taking away the impact of things that have happened. They did this all the way through Rise of Skywalker, by the way. They'd set something up interesting and then undo it, and I just don't like that. By the way, in terms of references, I meant to say this. When it was crawling across the floor with its original programming to kill Grogu, that did remind me of one of my favorites, the Terminator, when the T-800 endoskeleton is trying to get Sarah Connor at the end of the first film. I did sort of think of that as a reference there. And then, of course, we get the one-liner with what was it? That's using your head.
Yeah,
they not quite as bad as I'm beside myself from video, but you know.
No, they push for the comedy. John Favreau pushed for more comedy in this one, I felt as well, just to make it light. Because I think, again, this could have been a just an exposition type episode, but actually he did throw some humour, which we haven't had much of in The Mandalorian. So I was pleased with that, even though the excruciating pun and dad joke of, the Schwarzenegger pun, at least used his head. He was dead tired. I had to let him go, etc.
Yeah.
Was used. So a nice little nod to Schwarzenegger. Maybe in the writing, you're right, Keith. Maybe he was thinking of Terminator at the time, and he just had a Schwarzenegger moment.
Yeah.
I was thinking, are they going to bring? Because they've had, Michael Bihn's been in The Mandalorian. You've got the wonderful Carl Weathers here as well. So two guys who've worked with Schwarzenegger previously. I'm wondering if there will be a creature, an alien, or a mahusive 70-year-old Austrian Mandalorian, perhaps making a cameo. With that, that's another speculative point. Maybe that you will have, the Manda Arnie involved in this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And another thing with the little jokes is I thought it was quite funny that Grief has those two little droids stopping his cape from dragging across the ground. I thought that was kind of silly, but funny. But also, I mean, when he went back to Navarro, it almost looked like Galaxy's Edge. Actually, it looked like they were walking around filming at Galaxy's Edge, just with the sort of look of the place. It was bizarre, but I just don't know. It was kind of, I just found it a frustrating episode, if I'm honest. I was, as I said, I don't want to be negative, but I was underwhelmed by it. I mean, it can only get better as far as I'm concerned here now. There were things, I just didn't connect with it. Even the pirates, I just thought it was all a bit silly. Like, that pirate looks like a kind of cross between Swamp Thing and the character, the Davy Jones character from Pirates of the Caribbean. I was like, what the hell was that? And yeah, I don't know. I was, rather than This Is the Way, I think it's lost the way a little bit for me. They've had to do a bit of course correcting because of the Gina Carraro thing and what they were going to do with that character. But this does feel like just a massive reset to me. It feels like they've just, everything the first two seasons did really well. It just feels like they kind of hit the reset button and they're starting again. And yeah, I know he's going to go on another quest now, and they've set that up. It does have that. I've heard it criticized previously for having this kind of video game feel to it, where he ends up getting distracted on a load of side quests. And I don't necessarily have a problem with that, because I think that's life. We all have plans, and then something happens which pulls us off course a little bit. So, and I'm hoping that's all it is with this episode for me, that it's just a little bit off course, and come next week I'll be eating my words and loving it again. But yeah, I've got to be honest. I know we don't do, on the Star Trek one, we do the rank pip rating system. I don't know whether that's something we should maybe do for Mandalorian.
What would you do then? Would you go Padawan Jedi, Master. That's just two, really, isn't it? What kind
Yeah,
of ranking is there that doesn't make it Imperial in Star Wars?
it could be farm boy, youngling, Padawan, master, and force ghost. I don't know. Just go, but or X-wing fighters or whatever. I don't know, but yeah, please, if you're listening out there and you want us to do a rating thing and got a suggestion, put it in the comments. That'll be great. But yeah, sorry, Graham. I know I'm sounding a bit of a negative Nelly here, but I really wasn't that impressed with this. If I'm honest.
You had an image there of Bo-Katan as well.
Yes.
Was that deliberate? Was it something that
Oh no, I was
knocked you
literally
off
trying to
course?
find. I was literally trying to find some
Ah,
images, putting the slides together, trying to find some images from the show, which can be hard sometimes. You'd be surprised. It takes a while for some of them to
Yeah, I
get through.
suppose because again, that season one, Mandalorian set the bar so high. Yeah,
Mhm.
it wasn't because of disappointments. As with you, Keith, I remember growing up with Star Wars. Right? Star Wars is
Yeah,
practically now in my DNA. You
yeah,
know, may not know all the details. I've read all the novels or the comics, but yeah, Star
yeah,
Wars is there. So to have Mandalorian season one set the bar so high, be so entertaining, and then have my family also get into it and love it as much, but in their own way. That was excellent, and of course, it's going to be tough to maintain that
mhm,
trajectory, or to keep the trajectory going up, or keep it at an even keel. So,
yeah,
totally get your points on the story. And then this did seem to be a bit of a gap between two and three if you didn't get into Book of Boba Fett, and a lot of people I know just couldn't face getting to the end of that
I know. I mean that was
series as
pretty
well.
awful. We covered it on this show every episode, so if
Yeah,
people are
and it
listening
was
and
a mess in the end,
please go back and
unfortunately.
check it out. Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm I'm such a massive fan of the Mandalorian. What they're still doing with him, from everything, for his beliefs, how cool he looks,
Mhm.
how calm and cool he is in any crisis, and how he acts, the intelligence of him, as well as his softening and his paternal responsibilities that he's taken on to look after Grogu. And of course, Grogu himself is just amazingly fun as well, even though there is an edge to him as well. So all of that naturally make me a fan. So it's going
Mhm.
to be, and Touchwood, it doesn't go this way. It's going to take a lot for me to come down from
Yeah.
being massively
I,
positive. Yeah,
I
there's no.
actually Yeah, I actually think for all my negativity about this particular episode, I actually think it'll be all right. I think it's heading in a good place. I mean, I really, really like Katie Sackhoff as an actor. I think she's great. I think the character of Bo Katan is really an interesting character, and I think that she didn't have much to do in this episode, but she's got sort of top billing with Pedro Pascal in the credits. So um, you know, something more is going to happen there. Um, whereas I really like Moff Gideon in the first couple of seasons, or the second season and the very end of season one. These pirate characters, I hope they're not going to be the big bads of the season because I'm not very
They're a bit
inspired
lame.
by them.
They will be lame as big bads, all right. Even though we had very shiny ILM, um, shoot them up in the potato belt.
Yeah,
So that was pretty cool. Yeah, they can't be just the big bad, and we hope
yeah,
that there's going to be more. I think the big bad, as we saw from the trailer, if you remember it, is going to be either the armorer, who's the priestess, or Bo-Katan, or both. It's the creed and that religious zealot aspect for well, it's both actually.
Right.
That'll be it, and there'll be the conflict for Mando himself. So yeah,
I've not. I
Jon
have to admit,
Favreau, at least there's consistency because of his writing, and then Dave Filoni as well.
yeah,
Heaven offend that we don't get a Picard season 2 with this, where we have a really good, or for me, very good starter, and then it loses its way and gets a bit messy. You could argue the case Book of Boba Fett again. I just hope there is that consistency through with the writing, because you've got one mission, and while you said earlier on, yeah, he gets distracted, but don't forget, Mando has always finished his mission. He's always been successful, regardless.
yeah.
And even in
No,
gaming, you can fail quite easily. I'll put my hand up there for all the Xbox games that I tried and failed.
yeah.
Didn't complete them all. So I was not a Mando back then. Maybe
Okay.
I was a Padawan.
No, fair enough. I mean, I haven't actually watched the trailer. I try and avoid those sort of things, so I haven't watched the trailer. I don't know what's to come. As I said, as underwhelmed as I was and irritated as I was by things in this episode, I'm going to remain optimistic and positive because, as I said, I'm not coming at it from a point of intentionally wanting to slam this. I'm hoping it's going to go somewhere good. As you know, I loved everything Andor last year, and I want to love this as well. So I'm hoping it's going to go somewhere. It's really weird actually, because you mentioned about Picard, and again, anybody that's interested, we do also have a show that covers simultaneously with this. It covers Picard. It's covering Picard season 3 right now, which is sort of started more or less the same week, and it's interesting because without any sort of spoilers here, Pete Mealy, my co-host, was kind of the reverse of us here, because I was quite positive about the first episode, which we reviewed, and Pete actually had a lot of problems with it, and whereas you've been quite positive, thankfully, about, because we didn't talk beforehand, obviously, thankfully, about this, and I know I've got some issues. And it's funny, this is a bit like my growing up. I used to find, even as a kid, I would kind of seesaw between Star Trek and Star Wars. Sometimes I'd love one more than the other. I mean, they're very different, but they're also both very special to me. But sometimes, and at the moment, I have to say, I'm definitely enjoying Star Trek more than I am Star Wars. But as I said, I've only given it one episode, so, which is pretty unfair. So I will remain open-minded, Graham, and I take all good points as well. So thank you. I'm glad. I think it does make for a bit more of an interesting conversation if we don't necessarily 100% agree on everything about it. So
I don't really want to be finding myself later on in this series putting palm to forehead. I hope not. Again, Jon Favreau's done us good so far. Fair play to him. He's been solid and consistent. But if you do,
Boba Fett though, went seriously wrong, I felt.
But he wasn't so involved in that in his defence. But we also, don't forget, if you stray off course with either Trek or Star Wars, there's always the Orville, kind of right there. I watched an episode of the Orville and just getting into season 3 now, and even though it's far more Trek heavy, or it leans far into Trek, there was a Star Wars line used too. So Seth MacFarlane can do that because it's not Trek there, and the Orville is Fox, which is obviously owned by Disney as well. So using a Star Wars reference was a nice little nod there, I thought.
But there's no doubt about it. There is a lot of entertainment out there, isn't it? It's sometimes the biggest problem we've got is picking it.
I don't know if it's gold and silver. It would probably have to be the golden age of streaming, because it is the first that we're going through, because we're not pioneers, because we're consumers basically, and there's a lot of churn. There's a hell of a lot, as you said, out there, and we, in our middle age, are having to learn how to filter. It's a different skill set that
Yes.
we did when we were growing up. When we were growing up, we had to wait months and months, as you remember, for movies to get to the cinema, and even then, eventually onto VHS or TV.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
So
we're totally spoiled. I remember as a kid, between the Star Wars movies, there were Star Trek movies. So there was always, and again, that's probably why I seesawed between the two. Whereas now we've got new content of both. In fact, multiple shows of both as well on at the same time. So I mean, when you think about it, that's major spoiled. Plus, there's all the stuff that existed before out there as well. So yeah, it just gets ever more rich tapestry of lore, if you like, continuity and canon and all of that stuff, which is what we love to talk about.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, on that note, unless you've got anything else you want to add about this episode of The Mandalorian, I'm going to start bringing things to a wrap.
I do not.
Let's go. It's time to use the comm link. Okay, well, as I've mentioned before, we also do cover Picard on this channel as well. You're already here at Home Media Minefield, so thank you. Please do consider, as I said, liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and hitting the bell icon. All of that stuff really does help me to grow the channel. And if you see any value in this at all, I would really appreciate that. Thank you. If you want to follow us on social media as well, LSWOT Cast and Home Media Minefield are both handles to follow on all the social medias. If you want to see some of my more creative work, I also have another channel called British Isles. That's EYLES, as in my last name. And there's some short films that I've made on there and some other content. And it just leaves me then to say thank you to Neil Myers, who composed the music for this show. Neil's work can be found at neilmyersmusic.com. Now, there is other related Star Wars material on this channel as well. If you want to look at Star Wars on physical media, being Home Media Minefield, there is a video, which I'll put a link to at the end of this, that covers those. And also, some of you may be aware, but there were also Star Wars radio dramas back in the day, which I was a huge fan of. And I have a couple of experts that have written a book about these radio dramas, and they joined me to have a deep dive into that as well. So, yeah, so please check out that as well on this channel. But Graham, thanks. It's been fun. Thanks for joining me. And are you happy to come back next week and discuss chapter 18?
Very much so. If as I'm invited, yes, I will be here.
Great. All right then. Well, listen, thank you, Graham, and thank you out there for watching us. And we will see you next time on Let's See What's Out There. Bye for now.